Live from the Export Beer Garden Studios, you're listening to the BYC, where we'll be reviewing the absolute abomination that was the T20 series against Australia. Billed as the pinnacle of the cricketing summer, it was in reality a damp squib, a chaotic fiasco and a huge disappointment to cricketing fans throughout the country. It wasn't the 3-0 result, but rather the nature of the losses that stuck in the throat. Yes, there were injuries, but the question remains, was that the best we could put out there on the postage stamp called Eden Park? On a personal level, if I wasn't commentating the game, I would have turned it off. Let's hope the Test can redeem this summer of cricket and a full New Zealand squad can restore some honour in Dylan Cleaver. I will be frank with you. I am livid over that series. I am still spewing in my mouth a little bit. What an abomination. And I may be overreacting, but that was a major, major disappointment. And I'm not just talking about the 3-zip, bugger the 3-zip. There's so many things for us to delve into here.
Yeah, look, I was just going to ask, actually, first and foremost, if you're exhausted after pushing off the pickets there. That's the longest run-up I think I've ever heard you come off.
Yeah, no, look, this has been stewing in me for a few days. Since the last game, actually. Since the last game. And look,
I broadly agree with you.
I'm being genuine here. I love my cricket. I'll put my cards on the table. Yeah, look, I'm not a massive fan of T20. I'm just not. But I was massively looking forward to that series. Yes, the first game, I go, okay, it was an exciting finish. Didn't think it was that great a game, personally. The last two, before we even started the second match, I looked at that New Zealand side and went, are we taking the piss?
Well, you're right. You can't help injuries to a certain degree. But, yeah, broadly, I agree with you. Across the three matches, awful venues. The first game was a cracking finish. There was an edge there. The crowd was obviously right into it. So I enjoyed watching that, although I didn't enjoy the batting, if that makes sense. I thought with those tiny boundaries on the side, it was just a slogathon from ball one across bat slogathon. Games 2 and 3, I tend to agree that had zero redeeming features. And look, you know, after we hear from Paul, we can dig into some of the minutiae of those games.
Yeah, sure. Now, look, Paul, I know you're a much more balanced and calm individual probably than I am, and I know you love your cricket. What's your honest reaction to that three-match series?
I didn't realise you had so much money riding on it when you predicted that New Zealand would win the series 2-1 last week. So we should probably factor that into your reaction. But
sorry, Paul. Look, before you get into it, I just want to make the point. You guys did say our best chance was that first game.
Yes.
So it turns out.
And I stand by that. No, it was look. I went to the game, and I think I said to DC or maybe it was in our chat. You know, Australia didn't actually play very well to win that game, that first game. It was a beautiful night in Wellington. Fantastic crowd, met expectations in terms of creating a real buzz around the series leading into the test matches. So there were definitely redeeming features about that match. And to be honest with you, New Zealand should have won it. At pretty much every stage throughout that game, we were ahead until pretty much the last ball. And Tim David, he is a phenomenon, and he did an amazing thing. And bugger him, it sort of stuffed things up. But frankly, Australia didn't play particularly well, and I did clock that. And then those next two games, shocking. And I guess when you does it really matter going into the Test series? Because I guess that's the big picture that I am looking at it from. And I think it was an annoying, confident sapper for New Zealand and a real boost for the Aussies ahead of the Test series, basically saying to them, they could go back home or onto the Test matches and go, we don't have to play that well to beat these guys. That sucks.
I agree. And it's interesting you mentioned the Australian batting and a slog fest, Dylan, because I felt in all three games the Australians just went out there with the absolute intention of smashing every ball. Yeah. They consequently and randomly got bowled out in that second match after looking like they might get 300. It was just a tonk fest. And it was almost bordering for me on disrespectful of the bowlers.
Yeah, like Travis Head just came out and went whoosh from ball one. And he could do that because, A, the grounds are farcical. Wellington looks okay. Because it's got at least that ovoid shape, but the side boundaries there, I can't remember them. Like when the Cricket World Cup was here in 2015, it felt like a decent ground, but already it feels like woefully undersized. Eden Park's just a standing joke. So they just looked at those boundaries. They're coming from playing in places like the Adelaide Oval and Perth and MCG and SCG. They look at those boundaries and go, this is a joke.
Yes.
I can sit here with my 58-degree lob wedge and hit sixes into the Eden Park stand. So that distorts the kind of cricket you play because you're really only looking to access a couple of parts of the ground. It also distorts the bowling because the bowlers feel they can only bowl one length at Eden Park, else they will go into those stands, and at Wellington it's the opposite. So you kind of poor cricket. But then the thing that bugs me about it, and the thing that I think also bugs you about it, from gathering from what you've been talking about, is this series collectively has been hyped up for a long time. You know, we feel like we're a good cricket nation now. We want to get the Aussies here. We want to get the English here. We want to get the Indians here. So we get the Aussies here, and then partly through circumstance, partly through development for the World T20 later on in the year, and partly for, you know, just the whims of selectors, we put out a pretty ordinary looking 11 and get monstered by them. And it's that same old tropes come along that we wet the bed every time Australia get here, and it's true.
Yeah, well,
we do.
You know, my feeling, Paul Ford, was that Australia barely raised a sweat, to be honest, in that series. And I looked at that second game and went, there's no way this New Zealand side is going to beat Australia. There's just no way it's going to happen. We're looking massively skinny. Now, I'm no conspiracy theorist, but, you know, yes, there were injuries, but were there that many injuries that I felt like we kind of got the white flag out and said, look, let's just do what we can with these T20s and preserve our test squad as much as possible? Or am I being completely unhinged?
No, I don't think it's a conspiracy theory either, Jase. I think, you know, it feels like Mitchell could have probably played that series. Henry probably could have played that series. I mean, you had the bizarre situation of Lockie Ferguson being rested for the third game. He hasn't even got any cricket coming up. He's got the IPL. Like, what? Why would you do that? Like, yeah, there's some of it was pretty strange. And, you know, I guess going along from my point earlier, the thing about that Aussie team as well, it's Tim David, you know, he's a good player. That's fine. But it was guys like Nathan Ellis and Spencer Johnson that were proving themselves to be quite difficult for the New Zealanders. So it wasn't like their big dogs were kind of, you know, wasting us. It was actually their sort of peripheral players. You know, I think Trent Boult looked undercooked. You know, if I trying to think about, you know, two good things, it was being able to give David Warner a send-off, which was really fun. And, you know, he was actually on his best behaviour. Chorus of boos, and only managed to offend, I think, the mayor of Oamaru while he was here. So that's not bad for him. And probably the end of Steve Smith's T20 career. New Zealand can take responsibility for that. So that's a little bit of a silver lining there, perhaps.
Well, look, in terms of silver lining, let's try and, out of the ruins of that series, try and see some positive. Let's talk about the bowling. I like the pace. I like the pace. I'm going, yeah, there's some real prospects there. Now, in terms of Santner, in terms of Sodhi, I thought they were absolutely intimidated by the Australian batsmen. I don't think after that first game I've ever seen Santner bowl so poorly. He was dropping it halfway down the wicket, and to Mitch Marsh. And if you're going to be intimidated, he's the guy who's going to intimidate you. And there seemed a reluctance to me, Dylan Cleaver, for him to bowl normally and chuck it up there.
Yeah, I actually thought Santner may be trying to get a bit clever.
Right.
I felt that every single ball he was trying to anticipate what the batter was going to do and have a trick up his sleeve for it, where really I felt like, particularly on those grounds, it's super tough. So I don't want to be too critical of the bowlers, actually, because it is super tough. But I do think that sometimes you just got to bowl 4 good balls. And
yes.
If they hit them out of the ground, they hit them out of the ground. But you've got... trying to do like a variation or a big loopy ball or a dart one in every single ball, you're right. Mitch Marsh was just standing there and going, yeah, I'll have some of that whack. I've got serious doubts about Ish Sodhi's confidence levels at the moment, and I think that's reflected in his fielding, which we'll get to soon as well.
Oh, God, don't get me started.
But like you, I enjoyed the pace. I love that game where we played Ferguson, Milne and Sears all in the same 11, and although it didn't work, how nice was it seeing 3 New Zealand bowlers all pushing around that 145 mark. Milne as well, I thought was dreadfully unlucky. He was so let down by fielding. But he's another one who I think just needs to bowl more good balls and less variations.
Yeah, look, I think Mitch Santner is a really good cricketer, really talented, and I think Isha's as well. I think they're both good cricketers. I just felt they were intimidated and they weren't bowling how they bowl, and they were trying to sort of bowl to the conditions. But, silver lining in terms of the pace attack, Sears had a number of catches dropped off him, still got a number of wickets. Bloody Lockie looked good, Paul Ford. He looked really good.
He did. He looked excellent. As I say, really frustrating that he got rested for seemingly no reason in that third game. Seemed completely unnecessary. I mean, I think another, looking at the lessons for the New Zealanders, I just did some quick number crunching on the batting from Australia, because obviously that's who the bowlers faced. The top 4 strike rates per innings, each innings, were 4 different Australian batsmen. It was David, Short, Maxwell, and Head. They combined for 4 innings, 128 runs off 54 balls. So you've got these guys that are striking. I know Conway's talked about on T20, you got to strike around 200. They're striking at 237 collectively, 4 different guys, and you could chuck in another couple in the mix. Mitchell Marsh is in and around there. Warner's going to be doing something similar at the top of the order too. That power hitting game feels like New Zealand spinners in particular just could not contend with it.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we were saying previously. I was gobsmacked at times by the Australian batting because, like we mentioned previously, it just looked to me like they were literally all just having a tonk. There was no in between.
Partnership building.
Yeah, it was just go out there from ball one and have an absolute tonk. And, you look at David, I mean, he's a colossus. Mitch Marsh, he's a colossus. I mean, these are big units and they can hit the ball a long way. And
the big show hardly got going.
Yeah, well, he did. But he didn't bat well either, did he? I mean, I think he played like 5 reverse sweeps in a row at one point. It was just kind of chaotic.
Yeah.
Tim David is extraordinary. His average score in T20 international cricket is 39 off 24 balls, and he will have hit 2 4s and a 6 in that innings at least. He has got an incredible record.
Yeah, it's impressive. Well, let's get on to the other thing where, and I guess it comes down to Dylan Cleaver confidence, the woeful fielding. I mean, it just got farcical from both sides. But New Zealand, I don't know, was it 15 catches dropped in total? It must have been close to that.
Well, at least 7 went to hand and went down, but there were another couple that were bungled as well that might not go down as chances, but they definitely were. I think I described it as Pakistan in the bad old days.
Right.
Standards of ineptness. Yeah, it was so poor that every time a ball went up in the air, it was just a coin toss. If it was heading out to Chapman, you thought, okay, this is probably going down.
He must be having nightmares at the moment, eh? He must be tossing and turning in his bed going, oh, my bloody Lord.
Yeah, and, I mean, there's Ish, who I've given grief about his fielding before, like he just can't move laterally quick enough. You're trying to hide him in the field.
Yeah.
I mean, they clearly are, but it's not working. The thing that cracks me up is that when he's not in the 11, they bring him on as a
12th man. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That makes no sense to me. I mean, they've got like some fantastic young players that are literally sitting there running the drinks and getting their, running the helmets out and gloves and all of that kind of jazz. Tim Robinson was the substitute fielder in Wellington, and I can't remember who the New Zealand under-19 guy was that was on the bench in Auckland, at least
Luke Watson, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Get them out there. Christ, it makes no sense. I think that if we're going to, it's one of those things. Like, that's a position that's open. You can put anyone you bloody well want in there. Pick someone every single time and use that as a weapon out on the field as a substitute fielder, surely.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I think of Ish and I think of that skied chance from Mitch Marsh. It went high, in fairness to him, it went bloody miles in the air.
He didn't want a bar of it.
He didn't want a bar of it, and it was his catch. And he didn't get within Kiwi from recollection of it. What else do we want to reflect on in terms of this series, fellas? Do we just flush it down the dunny and move on?
Well, there was something that annoyed me at the end of the series, actually. And like you, I've got a tremendous amount of respect for the Mitchell Santner's talent. I'm not sure he's a Red Bull bowler of the highest quality, but he certainly is a white ball bowler, a magnificent white ball bowler. I'm not sure about his skippering, and I'm not sure about his post-match commentary. He was way too sanguine for my liking, and this is not the complete quote. I'm just pulling out threads of it. But in the post-match, he said of Game 3, which was an absolute shocker, he said, we did show some good stuff. There were times in this series when we were really good, and there were times when we didn't execute. That's cricket. And I'm sitting there going, what on earth?
Yeah.
You've just had your pants pulled down and your bottom smacked by our closest rival. You've just played a miserable game in front of a few thousand people rattling around in a dreary rugby ground, and that's as good as you can come up with it. I just would like to compare it, if I may, to some of the great orators of the world. So you got Churchill. We will fight them on the beaches. We've got Martin Luther King. I have a dream. We've got Scribe. How many dudes you know roll like this? And we've got Santner. Yeah, that's cricket.
Yeah, nice, mate.
Who are you going to play for there?
Extraordinary from you, Dylan Cleaver. I'm not surprised that you would want something a little bit more, to use your Hippocratic kind of sanguine definition, you'd probably want something a bit more melancholic, perhaps, or phlegmatic.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you look at that last match. Rain affected, pain in the arse, just a nightmare. New Zealand gets set the task of 126 off 10 overs with all their wickets in hand. We're going, oh, geez, that's generous. We go out there, fall 30 runs short with 3 wickets down. And I'll be honest with you, even if we, and this is my issue with T20 cricket when it gets this farcical, even if we had have won that game, I would have taken no pleasure whatsoever from that victory. I would have gone, what a pointless, meaningless exchange that was, Paul Ford.
Well, and of course it was literally a dead rubber as well. So
yes,
absolutely meaningless. Yeah, it was a very strange 11. It was a shambles of a game, just from the mechanics of it. And then New Zealand performed terribly. Again, as I said at the outset, I don't think Australia would have come off the field that day and gone, shit, we were amazing today. They would have been like, far out. Is that all we have to do to beat these guys?
Yeah, not good. Let's move on.
Yeah, draw a line.
Yeah, let's just move on, because cricketers will never talk to me again if I carry on. The great Neil Wagner announces his retirement. Big loss to New Zealand cricket. He is 37 years of age, Dylan, so I guess it had to come at some stage. But there's just something not quite right about it, and it's a bit iffy in my view.
Yeah, it goes right back to Hamilton, doesn't it? And the little tantrums he was throwing on the field, and we were trying to decipher what some of the gestures were, the shushing gesture and the middle finger to someone. It could have been Southey, and Southey having his arm around him. And I speculated at the time, actually, I wondered if he'd been notified that this was probably his last hurrah, and he was kind of going out kicking and screaming. And I'm not sure if it had been decided that early, but Kyle Mills, who was bowling coach for that series, said something really interesting pre one of the days, where he said he'd had a chat with Wags, and Wags at this stage of his career didn't want to be carrying the drinks. And I kind of thought that's very un-New Zealand cricket coachy. They never lift the lid. They never you never get a peek behind the curtain with that sort of thing. So it felt like this was decided a wee while ago. It felt like Wagner wasn't happy about it. He gave a really emotional presser yesterday.
Well, he's an emotional guy.
Yeah, and so it was very Wagner, I felt. It was very hard on the sleeve. It wasn't particularly elegant, like the words didn't flow easily, but he eventually got out everything he wanted to say. He did a lot of tears, thanked nearly everyone under the sun, apart from the guy sitting next to him, was a notable
omission.
Omission, unless I didn't hear it. But yeah, I mean, slightly weird kind of timing, bringing him down to Wellington to have him around the group for a week before sending him away again. But what a player. I don't want that to detract from
an outstanding career.
What an outstanding career, and what a servant to New Zealand cricket.
And can I just put this in the mix too, in terms of getting under his skin, Paul Ford. The fact that he's been 12th man a lot, carrying the drinks, etc. Even when he's playing a test match, he's often like the 5th, 6th bowling option. He's not the go-to man straight away. He's often quite a way down the pecking order. And I've just got a little feeling that pisses him off as well.
Yep, I think you're right. And it's whether they're doing that almost to piss him off because they think that
he'll rock him up. Yeah.
But you know, that it feels like with a record like what he has earned over, you know, the past 10 years, that seems a bit unfair to keep on doing that. You know, so surely that's not the case. That's actually the mechanics of the game. You know, he's the 5th highest wicket taker in New Zealand Test cricket history, 260 wickets, average of 27, 28, whatever it is, strike rate of just over 50. I mean, it feels like he's earned the right to not be treated like that. So I very much hope that that's not part of it, because that would be a bit, I don't know, it just feels a bit icky.
Yeah, and I wondered about that actually, Paul, in terms of, because I had the same thought, maybe that's their way of racking him up so that when he gets to the crease, he's, you know, massively fired up. You don't need to do that to Wagner. He's going to be fired up one way or the other. You don't need to give him motivation to be fired up. That's just the way he is. And I, you know, you mentioned his record there, 260 Test wickets, average of 27. That is a phenomenally good record, and just maybe he deserved a bit better, Dylan Cleaver.
Yeah, maybe. And
a bit more respect.
And in fact, along those lines, we've got some correspondence from Pete, who writes the retirement of Neil Wagner was not a big surprise, but it struck me how different the raw emotion of the occasion was compared to that of Ross Taylor a couple of seasons ago. Both were all-time New Zealand greats who perhaps held on a sliver too long. And he goes on to say, Wagner is undoubtedly the best first-change seamer we've ever had, but on paper I'd argue he's one of the best there's been, full stop. Attached is a list of the top Test wicket-taking seamers ever, bowling in positions 3 to 6. And, it is pretty amazing. Like, for a guy, he played 64 Tests, and 62 of them he didn't get the new ball. And he took 246 Test wickets in that kind of first, second, third change role, second highest ever behind Jacques Callis, who played close to 90 more Tests than he did. So, yeah, a pretty phenomenal record. He's taken more wickets with the old ball than your likes of Walsh and Stokes and Botham and Flintoff, Morkel, Joel Garner. So, yeah, he's up there. Whether you loved his method or not, it's kind of almost irrelevant. It was his method and it worked, and it took a lot of wickets for New Zealand, and they'll be hard to replace.
Yeah, very much so. In reflection, because we don't want, as Dylan, you know, stated, Paul, that negativity to be the final note of the Wagner sort of reign. For you, what? I mean, apart from the obvious that he just gave everything he had to give when he put on the shirt, what for you is the highlight for Neil Wagner?
Yeah, I mean, I guess overall, yeah, as you say, like the stats are one thing, and they're bloody impressive. And you do wonder whether what could he have done if he didn't come along at the same time as Southee and Bolt, or was the fact that he came along with Southee and Bolt at the same time part of his success? You know, I think it's a good conundrum, and one that people will talk about at the pub for the next 100 years. But, you know, I think his ability to go absolutely hammer and tongs when the team needed a miracle and needed to make something happen, he was incredible. Just that sheer force of will, Herculean effort, a guy that could play through injuries. I mean, hamstrings, busted toes, dislocated discs or whatever it was in his back. Just, you know, Kane Williamson described him as a warhorse that just kept going, and the guy that embraced the hardest of hard situations. And, you know, I just think he has become cast as an absolute fan favourite, a hero, a guy that just gave it death. And I think, Dylan, you've written about this in your books and all of that kind of stuff, but, you know, a guy that's had a bee in his bonnet. He's always been he's been the younger brother. He's had to go in on scholarships to flash schools. He didn't get picked up for a contract by South Africa. Just this relentless work ethic and desperation to prove the doubters wrong and show that he's got the ability and the skills. And God, I'm just going to miss the vein popping, cartilage twisting, fist clenching post wicket roars, and some pretty tough batting at times as well. I mean, I'm sad to see him go. I really am. Yeah,
so am I. And I think for me, you know, I mean, there's so many things you could pick as the standout. That series in Australia where we got an absolute arse-smacking.
Yep.
He was the shining light for me.
Tickled up Smith and Wade.
Wade, yeah, and I just remember that ball after ball into Wade, Wade, being the big man and taking it on the chest and stuff, and Wagger's just being so into it. And even the Australian fans were like, this guy's great. We love him.
Yeah. Oh, and Wade, the great quote from Wade, keep coming, big boy.
Yeah, and he did.
Yeah, I've got quite a hyper-specific favourite moment from Wagner, actually. It was quite early on in his test career, and it was a test at a ground I can't stand, but I was there for every day. It was against India at Eden Park, the test where McCullum smashed 200 in the first dig. Williamson got 100. Huge first innings lead, and then we collapsed like a pack of cards in the second. India were chasing it down with ease. Shikhar Dhawan was playing just innings from the gods, and then Wagner, and it was the first time I'd seen this forever. Wagner started going left arm round the wicket to a left-hand batter who was well set, and I was thinking, what on earth is he doing here? And he just bowled this rip snorter of a bouncer that Darwin on 100 and something couldn't get out of the way of, tried to drop his gloves, not in time, brushed the gloves, caught behind by Watling. New Zealand go on to win that test, win the series on the back of McCullum's 300. I just thought then, wow, he's got something about him.
Yeah.
There's something different about this guy.
Yeah, well, let's just say what a legend you are, Neil Wagner. As Paul Ford so eloquently put it, a huge fan favourite. A lion-hearted performer, and you will be missed, mate, and all the best for your future endeavours. I'll tell you what we're going to do now, fellas. We'll take a quick break and be back shortly. Yes, welcome back to the BYC, and another link in the World Test Championship gone, fellas. I'm looking at the side that won the World Test Championship and the side we currently have. Some interesting comparisons there, Dylan.
Yeah, well, there's only three. With Conway's injury, which we'll get to in a second, and Wagner's retirement, of the 11 that took the field at the Rose Bowl and New Zealand cricket's greatest ever moment, is just Thomas Latham, Kane Williamson and Timothy Southey left from that 11.
Wow.
Oh, maybe Harvey Nichols if he gets a run. He's been brought in as cover. But, like some big names have gone. Ross Taylor, Watling, de Grandhomme, Jamison's back, Wagner, Bolt's taking the money. So yeah, it's a vastly different look, and that it didn't. I think I was talking to you about this off air. When they won that World Test Championship, it didn't feel like the end of the era. We knew Watling was retiring, and we knew Taylor probably didn't have long left, but it didn't feel like in 2 years' time we'd be sitting around talking about how there's only 3 of that 11 about to play a test against Australia.
Yeah.
That's true. Although I must say, Devon Conway would be in there too, but still the point remains. Yeah, 7 of them have gone, possibly 8, God forbid.
Yeah, it's a real transformation. Well, let's focus on the Basin Test match. Sold out, fellas. The weather looking good there, I believe. Paul Ford.
Yeah, it's a little bit iffy today, Jase. There'll be a little bit of moisture about overnight, but it's meant to be pretty decent tomorrow over the next 3 days, and then a little bit of moisture around, I think, on Sunday, maybe into Monday.
Yeah. We're hoping for redemption. We're hoping for redemption and that this series gets us back on track. The history, Paul Ford, the history. New Zealand has...
Yeah.
You talk us through it.
Well, yeah, I guess over the last 20 years, Australia have only deigned to play New Zealand 19 times. So we don't even play them once a year on average. And Australia have won 16 of those games. Of course, New Zealand, that famous 7-run victory at Bellerive Oval, the Doug Bracewell game in 2011, and there have been 2 draws. So not only do we not win very often, we generally lose. A couple of bits and pieces. This, of course, is a match a series between the only 2 winners of the World Test Championship. It's a long time between drinks, 7 years since Australia were last here for Test matches. We even had Nathan Lyon lamenting that it's a shame it's only a 2-test affair. You mentioned the conditions. I think expectations around this one, and lots of enthusiasm. I mean, it's basically, I don't know, I've had about 30 text messages, people trying to get tickets. It's sold out. You probably sell it out 50% again. Last start, of course, New Zealand beat South Africa, and Australia are coming off the back of a a loss to the West Indies, so we shouldn't forget that. And a couple of stats. Haven't beaten Australia in a test on home soil for 31 years. That was the Danny Morrison, Dipak Patel demolition of Alan Border's team. Pat Cummins wasn't even born when that happened. That is frightening.
Trivia question for you on that test. How were the winning runs accrued? Think friend of the podcast. Think friend of the podcast.
T. Blaine, I believe. Was it off a thigh pad, perhaps?
I think it was off his butt cheek.
Butt cheek. Well, the conditions, as you were saying, Paul, the weather's looking pretty solid. It is sold out. Are we going to see a beautiful green top there, Dylan Cleaver, as always, do you think?
Yeah, I think so, although there might have been slightly more nerves about preparing that verdant green top for an Australian attack rather than a Sri Lankan or a Bangladeshi one, as we often present on those occasions. So, yeah, I still think it's going to be a vital win toss, bowl first wicket. Yes. But, I think it's a hoary old cliche, but if you can battle your way through the first session.
And then she starts flattening out on the end of day one, day two, and then she's
does it
batting deck for 2 and 3.
Does it against Pat Cummins, does it? Does it flatten out and get easier, does it? Yep.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Well, let's look, because no Wagner, of course, no Jamieson. It's such a tragedy, no Jamieson.
No Conway.
And no Conway. And I see that Nichols, Harry Naps, is back in. On the positive front, he's been in form.
He's been in great.
So he's smashing the ball all over the place. So that's a good thing. The bowling attack, Paul Ford, Southey, Henry, O'Rourke, don't mind it.
No, I don't mind it either. And as we've mentioned, thank God O'Rourke is here. I think there's a decision to be made. Is it going to be Scott Kugelheim or is it going to be Mitchell Santner? I mean, there's a weirdness about Kugelheim around in a few areas, as we know. There's some unsaid things there. But I guess I was just coming at it from a purely cricketing point of view. He's literally been playing T20 cricket over in the UAE. I mean, and then playing a bit of T20 cricket for ND. I mean, it's a very weird diet that he's coming into this match with. And on that basis alone, I think it has to be Santner that plays this game. There's been a few clues from Gary Stead that he thinks that they stuffed up not picking Santner in Hamilton. So, all the signs are that Mitchell Santner will return to the 11, and that means Kugelheim will run the drinks. A real shame. Yeah, Conway out with a thumb. I guess there's just these sort of, I feel like, you talked before, Jase, about the players that were out during the T20 series, which means they obviously haven't been playing. Are they actually coming back? Are they under injury clouds or not really? Conway obviously is out, so that's one. But Ravindra's had a knee thing. Matt Henry's had hip soreness. Mitchell's been out with a heel. Williamson won't have been sleeping because he's got a new baby in the house, and Jamison's out for a year. So, yeah, look, there's a New Zealand just feels a little bit more disrupted than Australia, if I put it that way.
Can I just ask a really stupid question? And I know there'll be a very simple answer to this. Ferguson, not available, playing other stuff.
Just doesn't play Plunket Shield cricket. Doesn't.
Is that it?
Doesn't play any cricket where he's required to come back for second, third spells of any length. So I just don't know if you can trust that. But I mean, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see Milne, but it's the same problem.
But I mean, Dylan, these are fit young guys. I mean, you come in, you give them 3 overs, just out and out pace, have a break, then another 3 overs, just go hard, then another 3 overs mid-afternoon, and then another 3 overs at the end of the day. Easy peasy.
Yes, that one at the end of the day where the back breaks, though, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. It's a weird situation. But Ferguson has tried to play red ball cricket and it hasn't worked for him. Same with Milne. Sears, I don't know what the status is there. I mean, Blair Tickner was around being picked at this time last summer. I don't know how Scott Kugelheim, off a diet of T20 in the UAE, has been elevated above him. Maybe there's something wrong with Tickner as well. I mean, I'm not saying he convinced, but he did do a job for New Zealand in that series against England. He was the Wagner, wasn't he? He was the one coming in and bowling a lot of short ball stuff. Sorry, it was against Sri Lanka after the England series. I'm not sure what the Northern District's right arm pace bowler with a slightly controversial past has done to earn that spot in the squad above even Wagner himself. I don't quite get it, but obviously they've got some method behind their madness.
Let's just look at the batting, Paul Ford, and form concerns. No Conway anyway, but looking at the lineup there, I would put 2 stars by players who I think potentially are struggling with their form a little bit at the moment, namely Latham and Blundell.
Yep, I'd agree with that, Jase. And yeah, as I mentioned before, and then you've got Phillips didn't exactly set the world on fire. A couple of, or at least last start, a frustrating knock in that last T20. Williamson's, I guess we just trust that he'll be amazing. Mitchell, I think, is in the same boat, assuming he's okay, and Ravindra the same. So, and then you would assume Young will slot into that opening position. So yeah, there is an element of we hope that New Zealand's batting is okay, but there's a few question marks over it, certainly.
Thomas Latham showed signs, green shoots of recovery in that second test against South Africa, didn't he? I think he got a 30 or a 40 or something like that, which I know is not the kind of bulk runs that you want from a guy like him, but it did show some mid-level test competence, and allied to that, some pretty spectacular domestic form. I'm not quite as worried about his form as I am about Blundell and Conway, who has subsequently busted his thumb.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? A hell of a team to try and find form against. Probably the best bowling attack in the world, with the prospect that it could be a green top as well. There'll be a few players having nervous sleeps tonight, I would imagine.
Yeah, there's a couple in that Australian bowling attack that just don't bowl bad balls.
Yes.
You might get a couple from Stark. That might be a guy that you look to score off, but he's obviously dangerous in other ways.
Yes.
But Hazelwood, Lyon, Cummins, you just don't get bad balls.
That's right. Well, that's the strength of Australia, Paul Ford, is they are relentless. There is no actual let-up for the batsman. Normally when you get down to the second drop bowler or whatever, you go, I can relax a little bit more. Even Lyon is a massive challenge for them. There's just no let-up for the batsman.
No, that's right. When you're leaving guys like Nisa and Boland on the bench, for years, it's a frightening prospect. And don't forget as well, Cam Green will be in that top 4. He'll be batting number 4 for Australia, you would assume. Mitchell Marsh at number 6. So not only do you have the luxury of the big 3 plus the bald alien, Nathan Lyon, you've also got not a bad, 5th and 6th bowling option in the form of the big beast that is Marsh or the big daddy longlegs, Cameron Green. So yeah, they are replete with many, many options. And, yeah, that's just the bowling, and then the batting's not too bad either.
Oh God, I'm suddenly feeling quite nauseous. I'll give you
a stat. Do you want one?
No, go on, give me a stat then.
Usman Khawaja's average versus New Zealand, 72.6. He's only behind Adam Voges, nightmare against New Zealand, Simon Katic, nightmare against New Zealand, and Adam Gilchrist, frightening.
Good God. All right. Now it's time for the TAB Good Punt, and I believe you have that, Paul Ford.
I do, mate. This week, our BYC TAB Good Punt is a $100 bonus bet. It's so obvious who picks these bets. Is any player to hit a 6 on day 1 in the first session, paying $12. Outrageous bet, I assume, from the brain of G Lane. So yeah, head to the TAB website, tab.co.nz, or download the TAB app to check out all the cricket promos and boosted odds markets. Get amongst it.
He's
Good
really
stuff.
backing Australia to bat first, isn't he?
Well, it'll either be that or us batting first and someone dropping one short and a massive top edge over the keeper down to the boundary.
Howling southerly.
Yeah, exactly. India versus England, been enjoying watching that. Of course, India 3-1 up now. England's been fighting hard. Dylan Cleaver.
Yeah, that was a good test, the one in Ranchi.
Yeah.
On what looked like a crazy paving kind of wicket, which actually ended up playing not bad. England dominated for a while there. Got a first innings lead. Probably should have been a bigger first innings lead. India's tail was annoyingly competent in that first innings to get them somewhere near, and then the spinners ran through England in that third innings. Been a really curious series for the England batters that all have starred at some point, but they've never, apart from their first test, they've never put it together as a collective. Like Ollie Pope's played that amazing 196 in the first test, done nothing since.
Didn't he get a pair in this one?
He got a pair and got a second ball in the first bowler.
Yeah.
So 3-ball pair. You had Ben Duckett with an incredible century in the third test, but probably hasn't done a lot other than that. Joe Root got an amazing century here at Ranchi, done nothing apart from that. Unbelievably, Crawley's probably been their most consistent player, and he's the guy that McCullum proudly picks to be inconsistent. Doesn't want him being consistent. Wants him to win games and do nothing in between. So
yeah,
there you go. It's been a curious series like that, but yeah, I mean India, jeepers, they've got talent coming out their pores, haven't they? That guy,
yes,
that guy Jaswal. Oh man,
he's a good player.
Across the street to watch him bat. He has already hit 25 Test sixes, I believe, or maybe 26 now. And he's played something like 8 tests. He's on target to end if he plays as many tests, 100 tests, he's on target to hit 200 sixes, something utterly ridiculous.
And just in terms of the talent, I mean, the spin talent as well is just ridiculous. I was just thinking of the destroyer in the second innings for India.
Kuldeep Yadav?
Yeah, Yadav.
What a bowler he is to watch.
How good is he to watch? And, and I love the replays when they're doing the slow-mo replays, and it's like this patchwork quilt of a pitch where you just see cracks everywhere. Stokes, the one ball just sort of basically going along the turf. That happened quite a few times. Jeez, they've got talent on the spin bowling. Paul Ford.
Yep, they do. But, I do think England have shown a method. I've really enjoyed watching the way that they've played. It could have been quite different. I know that sort of sounds like a stupid thing, but normally...
Sounds like New Zealand thing to say.
But normally you get annihilated in these test matches. Even chasing that 192, India lost 5 for 36. They were 5 for 120 at one point, and you thought, this could be amazing. Yeah. Similarly, England were going along magnificently and then lost 8 for 80 or whatever it was to be all out for 145. I think that they will look back and there's just going to be these half sessions where they've thought we really, shat on the patchwork quilt there. But I guess at the end of the day, it's the first Test series loss of the Bazball era, and it was probably always going to be. But I do think England have showed, a really interesting way of trying to attack India and put them under pressure, and I think that's probably the way to go.
Yeah, because I think that after the first 2 tests, India were getting a bit angsty.
Yep.
Stokes says the way we have reacted to everything, even being on the wrong end of 3 results, is something I'm incredibly proud of. There was a view that we didn't have a chance in hell of even competing with India, but even today, that wasn't an easy win, and I think that they would admit that.
Yeah, I mean, look at England's spinners. They're neophytes. Tom Hartley, who we'd never heard of before this, Bashir, who we'd never heard of, Rian Arkman, who we'd barely heard of, no Moeen Ali, no Jack Leach. It's been an impressive performance, but one that you still feel like, maybe, it probably could have been 2-2 going to our last test, and that would have been mint.
Awesome, up into the mountains. And of course, let's not forget, no Kohli, Ashwin's been coming and going, Jadeja's been coming and going. I feel like England, as I say, they'll look back and go, we had some opportunities here that we just couldn't quite seize.
Yeah. Right now it's time for Paul Ford's News or Ruse.
Yeah, that's Dylan Cleaver with who I think swept the internet last week. So, the Oi Hoi Trophy is on his mantelpiece over on the North Shore. 3 things. There'll be something wrong with one of them. Here we go. Number 1, Namibia's Jan Nicol Lofty Eaton has set a new world record for the fastest ever international T20 century, taking just 33 balls to reach triple figures and fire his nation to victory over Nepal. The 22-year-old came in with Namibia sitting at 62 for 3, blasted 11 fours and 8 sixes en route to 101 off a paltry 36 balls. In the process, he broke the record owned by one of his opponents, Nepal's Kushal Maya, who whomped a 34-ball century against Mongolia and previously held the record. Chris Gale has the fastest ever T20 century, 30 balls, and Colin Munro, of course, holds the Black Caps record for the fastest T20 ton for New Zealand against the West Indies, set back in 2018. Number 2, Nelson's future as a host for international cricket matches is under significant threat unless a policy banning alcohol advertising is changed. Local councils have been warned. In a letter, Nelson cricket chairman Andy Leonard said the Black Caps one-day international hosted at Saxon Oval in December was placed in jeopardy when Nelson City Council voted against providing an exemption to allow alcohol advertising in October. The vote was subsequently overturned a week later. Nelson Cricket is calling on the councils to permanently change the Saxton Field Joint Management Plan, which prohibits advertising for alcohol at the grounds. And number 3, Broome in the USA. Former Black Cap and Otago cricketer Neil Broome has joined forces with the United States Premier League franchise. The 40-year-old hopes the relationship will deliver opportunities for the region's young talent through his cricket academy in Dunedin. The right-hander has made several trips to the US to play for the Maryland Mavericks and has inked a deal with them, linking his academy to the franchise. Cricket's getting bigger over in the States. The Mavericks he said, they've signed a few academies, including mine. The Mavericks have asked Broome to identify some players who could play in the competition, and he has singled out the likes of Hugo Bogues, a 16-year-old Queenstowner who scored a massive ton at the under-19 nationals and is scoring club cricket tons for fun in the Dunedin competition. There we go, boys. What do you want? Bashing Namibians, boozing Nelsonians, or Broome in the USA?
I'll go Broome in the USA and say it's not the Merry Mavericks, whatever they're called. That's not the name of the team that he's associated with.
Yeah, the first story was really curious because I'm sure Paul Ford gave about 3 different ball numbers that guy scored his century off, and one point saying it was 36. It just sounded awfully confused, like he got himself in a tiz. So I'm going to go for story number 1.
That was a genuine mistake there, but you are right. It is story number 1, but it's for a much more obvious reason than you would have thought. The record is, of course, held by Glenn Phillips, 46 ball ton for New Zealand versus the West Indies at Mount Maunganui.
That was piss poor of you, Cleaver. You should have known that. You're a cricket writer, for God's sake.
I couldn't get Paul's terrible error out of my head.
So focused on the maths.
I was on a loop.
Right.
I'll take the trophy, though.
Fair enough. Do you get it for a half-right answer?
Well, I mean, I don't want it, but I think it's certainly a retention situation.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm afraid to say.
Right now it's time for Dylan Cleaver's Who Am I?
It's Dylan Cleaver's Who Am I?
Yeah, thank you there. Last week, we had a number of winners. It was Merv the Swerve Wallace, who was apparently an amazing batter in domestic cricket, an incredible batting intellect, marvellous coach. He was part of the 49ers that drew nil-all in England, that had luminaries such as Walter Hadley, Bert Sutcliffe and Martin Donnelly. Just when it came to the tests, he scored a ton of runs on the tour, but when it came to the tests, he just couldn't quite get it together. But he is the grandfather of Ryan Fox, who was the stick and ball game. Who am I? My birthplace corresponds to that of the Finn brothers, but history never repeated as my interests were firmly locked on cricket and basketball. With a test batting average less than 6 and a bowling average of greater than 62, you could say I didn't make the most of my 6 appearances, and well, I can't really argue with that assessment, especially given that 5 of those 6 tests were in New Zealand and 3 were on my home ground. Where I will blow my own trumpet, though, is that I earned that shot at Test cricket, ending my career with more than 100 first-class matches and close to 400 wickets. Given that I scored just 300 more runs than I took wickets, my elevation to number 10 in the order when playing for New Zealand spoke to just how bad the number 11 and lead singer of Coldplay was. I ended my first-class career in 2018 at the age of 39 and started a career as a bowling coach. Now I'm working for a supply and branding specialist.
I do know that one. But I can't, there's no point in me saying, because then it ruins the competition. All right.
I've got. I don't know how to say it. Does it BA?
I think you're on the right track.
Okay.
Right.
There's not very many international crickets from Te Awamutu.
It's now time for Paul Ford's Cricket Violence Corner.
Paul Ford's Cricket Violence Corner.
You brace yourselves. We're in Gurugram, India today, where 4 suspects were booked for allegedly shooting at a guest inside a restaurant during a brawl that broke out after a cricket match. The incident took place at 8:30 p.m. when 14 players from 2 teams separately reached the restaurant for an after-match feed. In amongst the dinner and drinks, a brawl broke out. One of the players asked 4 men to back off as they'd started to create a nuisance through their heavy drinking. The annoyed suspects, one of the annoyed suspects pulled out a pistol and opened fire in the air, resulting in panic amongst restaurant staff and other guests, and they started leaving the premises. According to investigators, all of them walked out of the restaurant and entered and started a brawl on the road, then fled in their cars. I love the charges: rioting with a deadly weapon, negligent conduct with respect to fire or combustible matter, attempted murder, voluntarily causing hurt, and criminal intimidation. Some lofty charges there under the Indian Penal Code.
Great stuff, Paul Ford. We're going to take a quick break and then be back with your correspondence. Welcome back to the BYC, and now it's time for the Toppa Correspondence.
Toppa Correspondence of the Week, brought to you by Leader NZ's Lasagna Toppa.
Yes, indeed, this is from Kenny. Do you want me to read it, fellas?
Yes, please.
It's quite long.
Go for it.
Okay. Hello, hey fellas, love the podcast, love the commentary, love your show, love my cricket, love the Black Caps. However, something has been bugging me about white ball cricket that needs to be discussed. We all know how cricket games are ultimately scored. Either the team batting first wins by a number of runs or the team batting second wins by a number of wickets. However, after the punishing last ball loss to Australia in the T20 in Wellington, the record books will forever say that Australia won by 6 wickets, which sounds like a brutal thrashing. In the white ball version of our beloved game, this is not a true indication of what really happened, especially in T20s and even perhaps crossing over into one-dayers. However, let's say for argument's sake that they won inside 10 overs with the same 4 wickets lost. That would indeed be a thrashing, and the record books would suggest the same win by 6 wickets. If they won with 19 balls to spare, same result, and in the context of a T20, a fair walloping. My suggestion to you drunken, debaucherous, yet lovely fellows, is that in a white ball game, especially T20, the winners should win not by wickets but by number of balls. Last night, indeed, Australia won by 0 balls, a thrillingly close game. Had they chased us down with 4 balls to spare, then they win by 4 balls. Again, a very close game. Alternatively, had they won at the end of the 10th over, they win by 60 balls. In this case, yes, indeed, a thrashing. Thoughts, Dylan?
I love just how detailed Kenny laid that out. I was wondering how many more examples we had before we got the picture. It makes sense on a lot of levels.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. MCC would obviously have to amend all their records from 1971 onwards, which is when I think the first one-day international was played, and they're probably reluctant to do that. But if Kenny can develop some sort of software to make that easy, then I see no reason why we should stand in the way of progress.
Paul Ford.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I like the idea. And I do see Crick Info, they do sort of bracket the balls remaining. So just had a quick squiz there in that game that we're very, very well aware of. 215 for 3 versus 216 for 4. And it says Australia won by 6 wickets, brackets, with 0 balls remaining. So it's kind of there, but yeah, you're right. I feel like the balls component is more important than the wickets, particularly in a T20.
Good call, man. I like it.
Yep.
Bring it on. And finally, an update from Tom B's correspondence about World Test Championship last week, Paul.
Yeah, so I had a bit of homework where I think DC threw to me and I hadn't done it. And we were just talking about what games have New Zealand got left in this World Test Championship cycle. So just to clarify that, New Zealand tours Sri Lanka, September, October 2024, 2 matches, then straight to India for 3 tests, I think, in October, November of this year. And then we end the cycle by having England come here at the end of 2024 for potentially 3 test matches. So just to clarify that, 7 more matches for New Zealand after these Aussie ones.
Great stuff, mate.
Pretty tough run home, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very tough.
Busy at the bounce there, Dylan Cleaver?
Yeah, the bounce is going to be extremely busy over the next 5 days as I head on the red-eye flight tomorrow morning to Wellington.
Yes.
In
New Zealand, I hope.
Why? Why do you hope that?
No, just Jetstar's are just a debacle.
Yeah, but cheapest price point.
Yeah, well, I guess so. But
we're not made of money at bounce towers.
Yes.
So, but anyway, look out for that. It's going to be coming to you each day after the test.
Good on you, mate. Paul Ford, people want to get in touch with us. What do they do?
Flick us an email to byc@beigebrigade.co.nz or slide into the DMs of the Alternative Commentary Collective or the Beige Brigade on Instagram or Facebook. Probably be a bit slow in replying because Dylan and I are going to be drinking beers at the Basin for the next
Beautiful, you lucky bastards. Hey, well, thanks for taking the time to listen to this podcast. We'll be back same time, same place, hopefully with better news and a more positive vibe next week. Until then, see you later.